My fiancée looked me in the eye at the airport, took the coffee I bought her, and said, "We need a break." Then she boarded a flight to Europe, blocked me everywhere, and disappeared for 6 weeks like I never existed. What hurt wasn't just that she left. It was that she fully expected me to be waiting when she got back. And when she returned acting like nothing had happened, her entire family begged me to forgive her. They thought they knew exactly how this story would end. So did she. They were all wrong. Looking back now, I don't think the hardest part was being blocked. It was realizing that someone I planned to marry believed my loyalty was automatic. She thought commitment meant I'd always be there, no matter how I was treated. That was the moment I learned there's a difference between loving someone and abandoning yourself for them. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from today, and what time it is where you are. I'd love to know. Because what happened next didn't just end a wedding. It shattered an illusion I'd been living inside for years. For most of my life, I thought being the easygoing one was a strength. I was the youngest son in my family. Growing up, I learned early that keeping the peace made life simpler. If my brothers argued, I stepped back. If someone needed help, I showed up. If a relationship hit a rough patch, I believed you worked through it instead of walking away. At 42, I owned a small logistics consulting company in Arizona. Nothing flashy, just steady work, honest clients, and enough success to build a comfortable life. And for the last 5 years, I thought I was building that life with Maribel Kessie. We had been engaged for nearly 3 years. The wedding venue was booked. Invitations had already been mailed. Family members on both sides were making travel plans. A stack of extra invitations sat on my kitchen counter at home. Back then, I looked at them and saw a future. Now, when I think about them, I see a warning I missed. A few days before Maribel's trip, I remembered something my grandmother used to tell me. The people who love you don't leave you guessing. At the time, I smiled and brushed it aside. I wish I had listened. The morning of her flight started like any other travel day. Phoenix Sky Harbor was busy but familiar. Rolling suitcases rattled across the floor. Flight announcements echoed through the terminal. The smell of coffee drifted through the crowd. Maribel seemed relaxed. I helped her unload her luggage near the entrance before we walked inside together. 6 weeks in Europe with college friends. That was the plan. I wasn't thrilled about being apart that long, but I trusted her completely. Trust never felt risky until the moment it broke. We stopped at a coffee stand near security. That had become our tradition over the years. Before any trip, one of us bought coffee. Nothing special, just a small ritual that somehow made departures easier. I ordered her usual drink, and mine. When I handed her the cup, she smiled. The same smile I'd seen thousands of times. The smile of the woman I was supposed to marry. For a moment, I felt proud. We had made it through difficult years together. Career changes, family problems, financial setbacks. Marriage felt like the next natural step. I noticed her boarding pass sticking out of her purse. Paris, then Rome, then Barcelona. 6 weeks. At the time, it felt temporary. Looking back, that boarding pass might as well have been a one-way ticket out of our relationship. We slowly approached the TSA checkpoint. That's when something changed. Maribel's pace slowed. Her eyes stopped meeting mine. Her grip tightened around the handle of her carry-on. I remember thinking she looked nervous. Then she said it. "We need a break." At first, I honestly thought I'd heard her wrong. "What?" She shifted her weight. "I just need some space." I stared at her. A break from what? No answer. "Maribel, what are you talking about?" She glanced toward the security line. "I'll explain later." Later. Those 2 words would haunt me. People walked around us. A family rushed past with 3 kids. A TSA agent called for the next group of passengers. Life kept moving. Mine felt like it had stopped. I waited for more. Some explanation. Some conversation. Anything. Instead, she repeated herself. "I just need space." Then she stepped into line. Just like that. No discussion, no plan, no agreement. One minute I was her fiancé. The next I was standing alone holding a coffee cup while my future disappeared behind airport security. A few seconds later, she gave me a small wave. Then she was gone. Her untouched coffee sat on a nearby ledge beside a trash can. I couldn't stop looking at it. The drive home felt longer than usual. I kept trying to explain her behavior away. Maybe wedding stress, maybe anxiety, maybe terrible timing. People make mistakes when they're overwhelmed. That's what I told myself. Around noon, I called Rowan Smart, my business partner and closest friend. He listened quietly. When I finished explaining, he sighed. "Something doesn't sound right, Cal." "I know. Give it a day." "That's what I'm planning." Even then, I was protecting her, still searching for reasons, still refusing to see what was right in front of me. That evening, I sent her a text. No response. A few hours later, I tried again. Nothing. I called, straight to voicemail. Then I checked social media. Blocked. Messaging apps. Blocked. Everywhere. Blocked. I sat motionless for several seconds. The realization arrived slowly. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't poor communication. This was abandonment disguised as a request. For the first time all day, another feeling surfaced. Not sadness, not anger, humiliation. Late that night, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The wedding invitations were spread across the wood surface. The room felt unusually quiet. I reached into my wallet and pulled out the coffee receipt from the airport. 2 coffees, one for me, one for the woman who had vanished without a conversation. I stared at that receipt for a long time. Part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation. Part of me wanted to fight for what we had built. But another part had started asking a different question. People don't accidentally block someone they love. And deep down, I already knew that. 5 days later, after complete silence, I stopped asking what Maribel meant by a break and started asking myself a different question. What kind of man waits around to be chosen? By the 5th day, the question had changed. It was no longer, what did Maribel mean? It was, why am I still standing in the same place where she left me? That first morning after the airport, I woke up before sunrise with my phone already in my hand. I had barely slept. The house was quiet in that strange way. A house gets when you know someone is not coming through the door, but your mind keeps listening for them anyway. No missed calls, no texts, no email. I told myself she had just landed overseas. Maybe she was tired. Maybe the time difference had thrown her off. Maybe she was embarrassed by how she had said it and needed a little time before calling me. That was me doing what I had always done, making room for someone else's behavior. I walked into the kitchen and started coffee. Out of habit, I reached for a second mug, then stopped with my hand on the cabinet door. That small moment bothered me more than I wanted to admit. At the airport, she had left her coffee almost untouched. I could still picture it sitting near that trash can while people rolled their bags past it like nothing had happened. I made 1 cup. Then I opened the wedding spreadsheet on my phone. Venue balance, catering schedule, final floral consultation, photographer deposit, hotel block. Everything looked organized, practical, normal. Except the woman I was supposed to marry had disappeared behind a word she never explained. Around mid-morning, I sent her a simple message. Just let me know you landed safe. I watched the screen for longer than I should have. It did not deliver. I put the phone down, made myself answer work emails, then picked it up again 10 minutes later. Still, nothing. By lunch, I tried to send something lighter. Rowan and his wife sometimes asked us to watch their small rescue dog, Murphy, and Maribel had always loved him. I found an old photo of Murphy sitting on my back patio, tongue out, looking ridiculous. I sent it with 1 line. Murphy says you owe him souvenirs. Red mark. Not delivered. That tiny symbol felt almost insulting. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just a little mark on a screen telling me I no longer had access to the woman who had accepted my ring. I called. Straight to voicemail. I tried another app. Blocked. Then another. Blocked again. My hands felt stiff, so I set the phone face down on the table. I did not throw it. I did not shout. I just sat there and stared at the grain in the wood, because looking at the screen made me feel foolish. That was the first feeling I could name clearly. Not heartbreak, shame. I was 42 years old, and somehow I had become the man checking his phone, like a teenager waiting to be noticed. That evening, I thought about my family. I was the youngest Durst son. In my house, that meant I was the one expected to bend. My brother got the first opinion. My sister got the emotional attention. I got praised for being calm. "You're the one who can handle it," my mother used to say. I used to take that as a compliment. Now, sitting in a quiet kitchen with a blocked phone, I wondered if being easy to love had slowly turned into being easy to leave. Rowan called that night. I tried to sound normal, but he knew me too well. "You hear from her?" he asked. "No." "Nothing at all?" "She blocked me everywhere." There was a pause on his end. Rowan was not a dramatic man. He had built a career by staying calm under pressure. So, when he went quiet, I paid attention. Finally, he said, "Cal, people don't block the people they plan to marry." I leaned back in my chair and looked toward the counter where the wedding folder sat. "Maybe she panicked," I said. "Maybe she got overwhelmed. Maybe Europe, the wedding, all of it just hit her at once." "Maybe," he said. "But don't confuse silence with respect." That line stayed with me after we hung up. For the next few days, I moved through life like a man keeping two schedules. One schedule was normal: client calls, invoices, grocery runs, gas in the truck, laundry folded late at night. The other schedule belonged to waiting, checking my phone when I woke up, checking it before meetings, checking it before bed, opening apps I knew would show me nothing. On the fourth night, I did something I am not proud of, but I think most people would understand. I opened a browser where I was not logged in and searched Maribel's public profile. I did not expect much, but there she was, not gone, not offline, not unreachable, just unreachable to me. Her featured photos had changed. Our engagement picture was gone. The Sedona anniversary trip was gone. The Christmas photo with my mother was gone. A picture from my company holiday dinner, gone. 5 years of us had been quietly removed. No argument, no announcement, just absence. I sat back from the laptop and felt something in me settle into place. She had not just blocked me, she had edited me out. That was the moment humiliation became clarity. By the 5th morning, I stopped sending messages. I showered, dressed for work, and sat in my truck with the engine off. The sun was just starting to climb over the rooftops in my neighborhood. A man across the street was pulling his trash bin to the curb. Somewhere, a dog was barking behind a fence. The world was still normal for everyone else. I looked at the calendar on my phone. Less than 3 months until the wedding. Then I opened the contact for the venue. My thumb hovered over the call button. I knew what people would say if I canceled. Too fast. Too harsh. You should have waited. But I also knew what waiting would mean. It would mean accepting that I could be erased and still expected to keep a place open. That night, I placed the wedding folder on the kitchen table. The invitations were still stacked neatly inside. I did not tear them up, not yet. I simply opened the folder and pulled out the vendor list. Venue, catering, photographer, florist, DJ. My hand shook once. Then it steadied. I looked around my quiet kitchen and said the words out loud. Not for Maribel, not for my family, not for anyone else. I'm done waiting. The next morning, I made the first cancellation call, and the woman on the other end asked me a question I wasn't ready to hear. The first call was to the venue. I had the folder open in front of me, the vendor list flattened against the kitchen table with a coffee mug holding one corner down. I had rehearsed the sentence twice before dialing. But when the coordinator answered, cheerful and professional, my throat tightened anyway. "Good morning, Calder. How are you and Maribel doing?" That almost did it. I looked at the empty chair across from me and said, "I need to cancel the wedding." There was a pause. Not judgmental, just human. Then she asked, "Are you rescheduling or canceling entirely?" That question hurt more than I expected. Rescheduling sounded hopeful. Like bad weather. Like a family emergency. Like two people still walking in the same direction, just later than planned. Entirely meant the road ended. I stared at Maribel's name printed beside mine on the contract. "Canceling entirely?" I said. The coordinator softened her voice. She walked me through the non-refundable portion, the partial credit, the paperwork she would email. She was kind, and somehow that made it harder. When people are cruel, you can push back. When they are gentle, grief has room to breathe. After I hung up, I sat still for a minute. Then I made the next call. Catering, photographer, florist, DJ, hotel room block. Each person asked a different version of the same question. "Are you sure?" Is everything okay? Do you need a little time? No, everything was not okay. Yes, I was sure. And no, more time was not going to turn silence into respect. By noon, the future Maribel and I had spent years planning was disappearing from calendars, contracts, and reservation books. What amazed me was how ordinary it all sounded. A few clicks, a few forms, a few cancellation confirmations. A wedding can look permanent until someone starts removing it line by line. Around 2, I pushed back from the table and walked down the hall. The spare bedroom door was open. That room had been half cleared for Maribel's things. She had measured the wall for her dresser. She had sent me links to closet organizers. We had joked that my house was about to become our house, though technically I had bought it years before I met her. On the refrigerator was a moving checklist in her handwriting. March move-in, donate old bookshelf, clear garage shelf. I took the paper down. For a second, I stood there holding it like it might still mean something. Then I folded it once and dropped it in the trash. That was not anger. That was protection. Later, I drove to a coffee shop near my office because I needed to get out of the house. I ordered without thinking. 2 coffees. The barista turned toward the cups. I caught myself. Sorry. Just one. He nodded like it meant nothing. To me, it meant everything. Habits stay after people leave. They sit in your hands. They come out of your mouth before your mind catches up. I took the single cup to a table by the window and opened my phone. Guests had already booked flights. My mother had ordered a dress. Rowan had taken time off work. People deserved to know before rumors did the work for me. So I wrote one message in the family and friends group chat. The wedding has been canceled. The engagement is over. I appreciate everyone who supported us, and I'll explain more when I can. I read it 3 times. No insults, no blame, no performance. Then I sent it. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then my phone started vibrating like it had been dropped into a hive. What happened? Are you serious? Is Maribel okay? Call me. Please tell me this is a misunderstanding. I let the questions pile up until I could answer without sounding broken. Then I typed carefully. Maribel told me at the airport that we needed a break. She flew to Europe. Since then, she has blocked my calls, texts, and social media. I waited several days with no contact. I am not continuing with a wedding under those circumstances. The chat went quiet. That silence felt different from Maribel's silence. Hers had erased me. This one heard me. Rowan replied first. You did the right thing. Then my cousin wrote, I'm sorry, Cal. That's not how you treat someone you're about to marry. A few others followed. Some were shocked. Some were careful. A couple only asked if there was another side. I understood that. There usually is. But facts still matter. By evening, I was back home, tired, in a way sleep probably would not fix. I set the vendor folder on the table and stacked the invitations beside it. For the first time all week, the house did not feel like a waiting room. It felt like mine again. Then my phone buzzed. A new notification appeared in the group chat. Maribel had joined. After days of nothing, after blocking me everywhere, after leaving me to explain the wreckage alone, she finally wrote 4 words. Call me, please. I stared at the screen, and somehow, before she said another word, I knew she was about to act like none of this had really happened. I expected an explanation. I thought maybe Maribel would start with, I'm sorry, or maybe, I know I handled this badly. I was not expecting a perfect apology. At that point, I would have settled for one honest sentence. What I got instead was a call the next afternoon from a number I did not recognize. I was standing in the kitchen, rinsing out my coffee mug, when my phone lit up on the counter. I looked at it for a moment before answering. Something in me already knew. Calder? Her voice came through bright, almost careful, like she was calling from a hotel lobby and trying not to disturb anyone. Maribel. There was a little breath on the other end. Then she said, I'm coming home Thursday. I waited. She kept talking. My flight lands at 10:15. Terminal 4. I'll probably have checked luggage, so baggage claim might take a bit. I stood there with water still running in the sink. She was giving me travel details. Not an apology, not an explanation. Travel details. It was the same tone she used when asking me to pick up dry cleaning or stop by the grocery store after work. Practical. Casual. Like the last 6 weeks had been a calendar inconvenience, not a rupture. Finally, she said, "We need to talk when I get back." That sentence irritated me more than I expected, because talking was exactly what she had refused to do. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands slowly on a dish towel. I wanted to choose my words carefully. I had learned by then that if I let emotion lead, people would ignore the facts and focus on my tone. So I asked quietly, "What does that have to do with me?" Silence. Not the silence she had used on me for weeks. This one was different. This was surprise. She had expected resistance, maybe hurt, maybe pleading. She had not expected distance. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean your flight information has nothing to do with me." Calder, don't be like that. There it was. A small phrase people use when they want your reaction to be the problem instead of their behavior. I said, "You told me we needed a break, then blocked me everywhere. I made decisions based on that." Her voice tightened. I was overwhelmed. I understand being overwhelmed. I don't understand disappearing. She exhaled sharply. "Can we not do this over the phone? We could have done it before you left, or any day after." She did not answer. I ended the call before I said something I would regret. A few hours later, I updated the family chat. I kept it simple. Maribel had contacted me. She was returning Thursday. I had told her the wedding remained canceled. The responses came quickly. Some people were relieved she had finally called. Others asked whether we would meet. A couple of relatives sent the kind of messages that sound kind on the surface but carry pressure underneath. Maybe hear her out. Everyone deserves grace. 5 years is a lot to throw away. I read them all, then set the phone down. Grace is a good thing, but grace without accountability turns into permission. Then Maribel appeared in the chat. "Can you please call me privately? This should be between us." I stared at that for a long moment. If she had wanted privacy, she could have chosen honesty before the damage spread. Now, people had canceled travel, lost deposits, changed plans, and worried over a wedding that no longer existed. The situation was no longer hidden just because she felt uncomfortable. I replied, "You're welcome to explain here. Everyone is asking because everyone was affected." The chat slowed. I could almost feel people leaning closer to their screens. Maribel began typing, then stopped, then typed again. Finally, her message appeared. I was under more pressure than anyone realized. The wedding became too much. I needed time to think, and I handled it badly. I never meant to hurt anyone. It sounded reasonable if you ignored the empty spaces. She mentioned stress. She mentioned pressure. She mentioned fear. She did not mention blocking me. She did not mention removing our photos. She did not mention leaving me to cancel a wedding alone. Rowan joined the conversation a minute later. He did not attack her. That was not his way. He wrote one question. How did you expect Calder to respond after being blocked for 6 weeks? No one answered right away. Then my cousin Dana added, "That's the part I don't understand either." Another friend wrote, "Did you try to contact him at all?" Maribel responded with something about needing space and not knowing how to explain herself. But the more she wrote, the clearer the pattern became. She kept explaining how she felt. She never fully addressed what she did. That evening, Rowan came over after work. We sat on my back patio while the neighborhood settled down around us. Someone nearby was grilling dinner. A dog barked twice and went quiet. The sky had that dusty Arizona orange that usually calmed me down. Not that night. Rowan leaned back in his chair and said, "She keeps talking about what she felt. She hasn't said one thing about what she did." I looked down at the patio stones. "That's what bothers me," I said. "It should. I keep wondering if I'm being too harsh." "You're not being harsh. You're being awake." That stayed with me. After he left, I checked the chat one last time before bed. Maribel had posted again. This time the message was more emotional. "I never thought it would go this far." I read that sentence 3 times, and there it was. She still thought the problem was the outcome, the canceled wedding, the family questions, the embarrassment, the fact that I had stopped waiting. She still did not understand that the real problem was the choice she made at the airport, and every silent day after it. The next morning, I discovered Maribel wasn't the only person trying to rewrite what happened, and that made everything much worse. By breakfast, screenshots were already moving around, not from strangers, from people who cared enough to warn me, but not enough to stay out of it. A cousin sent one first, then an old college friend. Then someone from Maribel's side who added, "I'm not trying to start anything, but you should see this." That sentence almost never brings peace. Maribel had been telling people she was overwhelmed, that she needed space, that I canceled the wedding before she could explain herself. The wording was careful, not entirely false, just incomplete enough to be dangerous. Every version left out the same things: the blocking, the silence. The fact that for weeks she could reach the world, but not me. Around 11, her mother called. Lisa had always been warm with me. Birthday cards, hugs at holidays, the kind of woman who could make guilt sound like concern. "Calder, sweetheart," she said. "I know you're hurt, but 5 years is a long time to throw away." I stayed quiet. "She made a mistake," Lisa continued. "People panic before weddings. You know how much pressure there is. Don't let one bad decision ruin a family." A family. That word landed hard, because all my life, family had meant being the one who adjusted. When relatives argued, I smoothed it over. When plans changed, I made room. When someone needed a favor, they called me because I was the reasonable one. Lisa wasn't trying to hurt me. I believe that. But she was asking me to step back into the same old role, absorb the damage, keep everyone comfortable, pretend peace was the same as respect. Later that afternoon, her father, Tom, sent a long message. His tone was different, less soft, more judgment. "A real man doesn't walk away the first time things get hard." I stared at that line for a while. It bothered me, not because I believed him, but because some tired part of me still feared looking like the man who failed. So, I left the house. I drove to the coffee shop Maribel, and I used to visit after Saturday errands. I ordered one coffee, the same kind she liked, and sat near the window. Across the street, an older couple walked slowly toward their car, holding hands like they had practiced it for decades. For a few minutes, I missed the woman I thought Maribel was. I missed planning menus. I missed late-night talks. I missed the stupid arguments over flower colors that felt important at the time. Back home, I opened old photos, engagement pictures, Christmas dinners. A short video of her laughing in my kitchen while my mother tried to teach her a family recipe. I drafted a message. "Maybe we should talk." My finger hovered over send. Then another screenshot came in. Maribel had written to a friend. I honestly thought he'd understand. I didn't think he'd actually cancel everything. I thought he'd wait. I read that last sentence again. I thought he'd wait. Not, I thought he'd be hurt. Not, I owe him an explanation. Just that. She had not misread the situation. She had misread me. When Rowan came over that evening, I showed him everything. He stood in my kitchen reading silently, then set the phone down like it was something fragile. "You're still trying to save the relationship," he said. "I'm trying to be fair." "No," he said gently. "You're trying to save the version of her that existed before the airport." That was the truth I had been avoiding. I wasn't only grieving Maribel. I was grieving who I believed she was. That night, I deleted the message I had drafted. I placed the phone face down and let the quiet settle. For days, I had asked myself how to save this. Now the question was different. Why was I the only one trying? The answer came when Maribel finally landed in Arizona, and what happened next erased any doubt I still had. Maribel landed on a Thursday morning. I knew because the airline sent an automatic alert to an old shared travel account we had used for vacations. Her flight touched down at 10:17. 6 weeks earlier, I had stood at that same airport with 2 coffees in my hand, watching her walk away after telling me we needed a break. This time, I was not there. I was in Rowan's office, sitting across from him with a stack of client contracts between us. We reviewed delivery schedules, billing terms, fuel adjustments, ordinary work, practical work, the kind of work that reminded me life continued even when your heart was still catching up. At 10:43, my phone lit up. Landed. "We need to talk. I'll be at baggage claim for a while." I read it once, then placed the phone beside my notebook. Rowan glanced at it. "You okay?" "I'm working on it," He nodded and did not push. That was what I appreciated about him. He did not confuse concern with control. By noon, Maribel sent a longer message. She said the trip had given her clarity. She said she had been scared. She said we should meet, talk honestly, reset everything, and move forward with more understanding. Then came the sentence that told me exactly where her mind was. We can still make the wedding work if we keep our heads. I stared at that line. Not, I know I hurt you. Not, I understand why you canceled. She was already stepping over the consequences and reaching for the future she still thought belonged to her. By mid-afternoon, the pressure campaign started again. Lisa called first. I let it go to voicemail. Then Tom texted. You owe her one face-to-face conversation. A mutual friend wrote, I know you're upset, but don't close the door while emotions are high. Another said, maybe this is just one of those things couples look back on later and laugh about. I almost laughed at that one, but not because it was funny. People are uncomfortable with endings. They would rather patch a broken wall than admit the foundation shifted. Around 5, Lisa called again. This time, I answered because avoiding every call would only feed the story that I was being unreasonable. Her voice was soft. Called her. Why don't we all have dinner? Neutral ground. No pressure. Just family. Lisa, I said, with respect, this is not a family dinner problem. She's devastated. I believe she is. Then let her explain. She had 6 weeks to explain. A pause followed. Then she said, people make mistakes when they're scared. They also make choices. That ended the call faster than she expected. Later that evening, while I was heating soup on the stove, another message came from Maribel. It was longer than the others. She mentioned the venue, the flowers, the guest list, even a possible adjustment to the date if we needed a little breathing room. I stood in front of the stove while the soup began to bubble. That was the moment I understood. In her mind, the wedding had not died. It had simply been waiting. Like me, the realization did not make me explode. It made me very still. I turned off the burner, moved the pot aside, and sat at the kitchen table. For nearly an hour, I did not answer anyone. I let the phone buzz. I let the messages stack up. Because the trap was clear. If I met her, the meeting would become a courtroom where everyone argued for forgiveness. If I refused, I would be called cold. That was the same trap I had lived in since childhood. Be agreeable or be difficult. Carry the discomfort or be blamed for it. I was done carrying it. Near midnight, I finally typed one message to Maribel. The wedding is canceled. That decision is final. I will not discuss resuming plans. I read it twice. No insults. No speech. No doorway left cracked open. Then I sent it. Something inside me eased. Not happiness. Not victory. Just the strange quiet that comes when you stop negotiating with someone else's denial. The next morning, I woke to missed calls, texts, and a voicemail from Tom that I deleted after the first 10 seconds. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and tried to work. Then one message arrived from someone I did not expect. It was from Bryony Hale, one of Maribel's old friends. She had been quiet through all of it. Her message was one sentence. You don't know the whole story. I stared at the screen, and for the first time in weeks, anger made room for curiosity. Because if there was more to know, I had a feeling it was not going to save Maribel. What that person sent me didn't save Maribel. It destroyed the last excuse I could have made for her. Bryony did not send the rest right away. She asked if we could meet in person first. That alone made me cautious. Over the past several days, nearly every conversation had come with a hidden purpose. Someone wanted me to forgive. Someone wanted me to soften. Someone wanted me to stop making Maribel look bad by telling the truth. But Bryony's message felt different. No pressure, no sermon, just, I think you deserve to hear this from someone who was there. We met the next afternoon at a small coffee shop on the north side of town. I arrived 10 minutes early, mostly because I did not like walking into uncertain situations unprepared. I ordered one coffee and sat near the window. When Bryony came in, she looked nervous. Not guilty exactly, but uncomfortable in the way people look when they know they waited too long to do the right thing. She sat across from me and wrapped both hands around her cup. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For not saying something sooner. I stayed quiet. She looked down at the table. I was with Maribel for part of the trip, not the whole 6 weeks, but enough. That was when I knew whatever came next would not make me feel better. Bryony explained that during the second week in Rome, Maribel and a few friends had been sitting outside a restaurant after dinner. Someone asked what would happen if I got angry enough to cancel everything. According to Bryony, Maribel laughed. She said, "He won't." I felt my face go still. Bryony continued carefully. Then she said, "Calder always comes back. There are sentences that hurt because they reveal something new, and there are sentences that hurt because they confirm what you have been afraid to admit. That one did both. I was not her partner in that moment. I was not the man she loved. I was the safe place she assumed would stay open no matter how poorly she treated it." Bryony slid her phone across the table. I saved these because the way she's telling it now isn't right. The messages were not dramatic. That made them worse. Maribel joking that I would cool off. A friend saying wedding stress made people do strange things. Maribel writing, "He just needs time." Another message mentioned how we could still get back on schedule once she returned. There was no concern for what I felt, no panic about hurting me, no plan to apologize before coming home, only the assumption that I would be there. I thanked Bryony and drove home without turning on the radio. Traffic moved around me, normal and impatient. I stopped at a red light and watched an older man help his wife step carefully off a curb. A small act, ordinary, but it reminded me that real love pays attention. Maribel had not paid attention to the damage because she never expected the damage to cost her anything. That evening, Rowan came over after work. I laid everything on the kitchen table. Screenshots, messages, dates, vendor confirmations. "The whole ugly timeline," he read in silence. When he finished, he looked at me and asked, "What are you still waiting for?" I started to answer, then stopped. Because I did not know. I was not waiting for Maribel to explain. She had already explained enough without meaning to. I was not waiting for her family to understand. They wanted the wedding restored, not the truth examined. I was not even waiting for an apology anymore. I had been waiting for permission to stop caring more about the relationship than the person who broke it. Rowan tapped one finger on the printed messages. "You don't have to use these tonight," he said. "But don't let anyone tell you this is all in your head." After he left, I organized everything into a folder. Not to humiliate her, not to win applause. I just knew that if people tried to turn me into the villain, I would need more than hurt feelings. I would need facts. Old me would have posted everything immediately. New me waited. That was not weakness. It was discipline. Later, while looking for an envelope, I opened the kitchen drawer and found the airport coffee receipt. 2 coffees, the date, the time, the last normal morning before everything changed. For weeks, that little slip of paper had felt like proof of being left behind. That night, it felt different. It reminded me where the truth started. I folded it carefully and placed it in the folder with the rest. The next morning, Maribel sent another message. This one was longer, softer, more urgent. "My parents want us all to sit down together. One final conversation. Please. We owe each other that." I looked at the folder on my table. For the first time since the airport, I did not feel cornered. I felt ready. Because the meeting they wanted was not going to save their version of the story. It was going to end it. I walked into that meeting expecting tears, excuses, and pressure. What I didn't expect was the most desperate move Maribel would make the entire time. I spent 4 days preparing for that meeting, but I still felt my chest tighten when I pulled into the restaurant parking lot. It was one of those family-owned Italian places Maribel's parents loved. White tablecloths, low lighting, framed photos on the walls. The kind of room where people speak softly because everything feels a little too formal. Maribel was already seated when I walked in. Her mother, Lisa, sat on one side of her. Her father, Tom, on the other. That image told me plenty before anyone said a word. They had come as a unit, not to understand me, to bring me back into line. I sat across from them and placed my folder beside my chair. No one asked how I was doing. Lisa started crying almost immediately. "We have all been devastated," she said. "The deposits, the relatives, the embarrassment. People keep asking what happened." Tom rubbed his forehead and said, This has hurt both families, Calder. I listened. For nearly 20 minutes, they talked about the canceled wedding, the money, the guests, Maribel's stress, the shame of explaining it to people from church and work. Not once did anyone say, "What did this do to you?" That told me the truth of the room. Then Maribel spoke. Her voice was softer than it had been in the messages. "I handled it badly," she said. "I panicked. I was selfish. I should never have blocked you. For a moment, I wanted that to be enough." She talked about counseling, a postponed wedding, starting over, turning the whole thing into a hard lesson we would someday be grateful for. It sounded almost reasonable. Then I noticed something. She was still describing the future she wanted. She had not asked whether I wanted one with her. When she finished, I said, "No." Just one word. Her face changed. The softness disappeared first, then the sadness. What remained was frustration. "So that's it?" she asked. "You get to decide everything?" I looked at her carefully. "You decided we were on a break without asking me." That was different. I was scared. "You were gone for 6 weeks. I needed time. You blocked me." Her voice sharpened. "Because you don't know how to give people room. You make everything so final. You're rigid, Calder. You always have been." Tom leaned forward. "She's right about one thing. You can be very set in your ways." Lisa looked down at her napkin, but she nodded. And there it was, the real meeting. If tears did not work, blame would. Maribel kept going. She said I had been emotionally distant before Europe, that she felt pressure to be the perfect fiancé, that I cared more about schedules and plans than her fears. Old me would have defended every point. Old me would have explained, corrected, pleaded to be understood. Instead, I remembered Rowan asking me what I was still waiting for. I reached down, opened the folder, and placed the first printed screenshot on the table, then another, then another. No drama, no raised voice, just paper. Messages from Europe, jokes about me cooling off, the conversation Bryony had described, Maribel's words circled in black ink. "He always comes back." The room changed. Tom stopped moving. Lisa's hand covered her mouth. Maribel stared at the page as if paper itself had betrayed her. I said. Bryony confirmed the conversation. She was there. Maribel whispered, "You brought evidence?" "I brought facts. There's a difference." No one spoke. That silence was not empty. It was full of everything they could no longer deny. I looked at Maribel. "I wasn't upset because you needed space," I said. "I was upset because you decided I didn't deserve a choice." Her eyes filled, but I did not soften. "You treated my loyalty like a guarantee. You thought I would sit where you left me until you came back ready to continue," Lisa said quietly. "Calder, is there anything she can do?" I reached into my jacket pocket. The old airport coffee receipt was folded inside. 2 coffees, the date, the time, a small piece of paper that had carried too much weight. I placed it on the table between us. "This is the last thing I carried from that day," I said. Maribel looked at it, and her expression cracked. "I'm leaving it here." Then I stood. I thanked them for meeting with me. I meant that, not because the meeting healed anything, but because it ended something that needed ending. I walked out without another argument. Behind me, Maribel began to cry. Not loudly, not theatrically, just a broken sound from someone who finally understood that the future she assumed would wait had already closed its door. A week later, I thought it was finally over. Then a certified envelope arrived in my mailbox, and what happened after that changed everything. A week after the restaurant meeting, I found the certified envelope in my mailbox. For a few seconds, I just stood there with the mail in my hand, looking at Maribel's name on the return label. My first thought was that it was another attempt to reopen the conversation, another explanation, another version of "please understand." I carried it inside, set my keys on the counter, and opened it with a kitchen knife. Inside was a formal letter. No perfume, no tear stains, no dramatic language, just words. Maribel wrote that she had spent the week thinking about what I said at the restaurant. She admitted she had treated our engagement like something she could pause without my consent. She admitted she expected me to wait because I always had. She wrote that she mistook forgiveness for something owed to her instead of something earned. I read that part twice. Then I found the cashier's check. It covered her share of the canceled wedding expenses. Not all of it, but enough to show she had finally stopped asking me to carry the cost of her choices. There was no note attached asking to meet, no call me, no future plan, just responsibility. That did not erase what happened, but it mattered. Over the next few weeks, the noise around us finally quieted. Mutual friends stopped asking for details. A few people who had defended Maribel reached out privately and admitted they had not understood the full timeline. Her parents stopped calling. From what I heard, even they began to accept that some consequences cannot be negotiated away at a dinner table. Nobody was destroyed. Nobody was publicly ruined. Life simply adjusted around the truth. And sometimes, that is the fairest ending people get. About a month later, Rowan and I met for coffee after a client meeting. The conversation was lighter than it had been in a long time. We talked business first, then baseball, then a ridiculous parking ticket he was still arguing with the city over. As we were leaving, he asked, "Do you miss her?" I thought about it before answering. "I miss who I thought she was." He nodded. That was the cleanest truth I had found. I did not miss being ignored. I did not miss waiting. I did not miss explaining basic respect to someone who should have known better. I missed the future I had imagined. That was different. Once I understood that, healing became less confusing. I started putting energy back into my own life. Work picked up. I had dinner with my mother without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I called my sister more often. I even volunteered twice a month at a local community center, helping young adults with resumes and job interviews. One evening, a young man there told me about a girlfriend who kept disappearing whenever things got serious. "She says I should just trust her process," he said. I looked at him and heard my younger self. So I told him gently, "Trust does not mean pretending something does not hurt." I think I needed to hear that as much as he did. A couple of months after everything ended, I was cleaning out the kitchen drawer where I kept old receipts and warranty cards. Under an engagement planning notebook, I found a duplicate receipt from the airport coffee stand. 2 coffees, same date, same morning. For a while, I just held it. Months earlier, that slip of paper would have felt like proof that I had been abandoned. Now it felt like proof that I had been warned before it was too late. I folded it and placed it in a small box with other things I did not want to forget, but no longer needed to carry every day. That evening, I drove out to a quiet overlook outside the city. The desert light was fading, and the city below looked softer from a distance. I sat there with the windows down, letting the air move through the truck. I was not happy in some perfect movie-ending way. I had lost a relationship, a wedding, 5 years of memories I had to learn how to live beside, but I had gained something I should never have given away, my own line. Some people mistake patience for weakness. Some mistake forgiveness for permission. Some assume loyalty means waiting forever. They are wrong. The people who truly value you do not place your dignity on hold while they decide whether you are worth keeping. So let me ask you this. What would you have done if someone asked for a break, then erased you from their life for 6 weeks? Would you have waited? Would you have forgiven them? Or would you have walked away? Have you ever stayed too long because you thought loyalty meant waiting? As I drove back toward the city, I felt something quiet settle in me. Not victory, not revenge, freedom. The day she boarded that plane, I thought I was losing the woman I loved. Looking back now, I realize I was finding the life I was meant to live.